Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today I have switched on to the chapter Cell Structure and Functions, and I have selected this chapter from the Science of 8th Standard. My dear students, you have already learned that things around us are either living or non-living. Further, you may recall that all living organisms carry out certain basic functions. Will you be able to list these functions? Different sets of organs perform the various functions as you have put in your list. You have to learn about the basic structural unit of an organ, which is the cell. So, let me define a cell. What cell is? Cell is the basic structural unit or building block of living organisms, or it's the basic structural units. Cells may be compared to bricks. Bricks are assembled to make a building. Similarly, cells are assembled to make the body of every organism. Now, how did discovery of the cell take place? There was a scientist named as Robert Hooke, and in the year 1665 he observed slices of cork. What cork is? Cork is the bark of a tree, and he observed slices of cork under a simple magnifying device. And that magnifying device he had designated himself. Now, what as I earlier told you, cork is a part of the bark of a tree. He took thin slices of cork and observed them under his self-designed microscope. He noticed partitioned boxes or compartments in the cork slice. These boxes appeared like a honeycomb. As you see, penta and hexagonal structures in a honeycomb, he observed same structures. He also noticed that one box was separated from the other by a wall or a partition. Who coined the term cell for each box? What Hooke observed as boxes or cells in the cork were actually dead cells. Cells of living organisms could be observed only after the discovery of improved microscopes. Very little was known about the cell for the next 115 years after Robert Hooke's observations. As you know today, we know a lot about cell structure and its functions because of improved microscopes having high magnification. Now, what cell is? Both bricks in a building and cells in the living organisms are basic structural units. The buildings, though built of similar bricks, have different designs, shapes, and sizes. Similarly, in the living world, organisms differ from one another, but all are made up of cells. Cells in the living organism are complex living structures unlike non-living bricks. Now, the question arises, a hen's egg can be seen easily. Is it a cell or a group of cells? The egg of a hen represents a single cell and is big enough to be seen by the unaided eye. My dear students, there are different varieties, shapes, and number of cells, and size of cells. Now, how do scientists observe and study the living cells? They use microscopes, which magnify objects. Stands, dyes are used to color parts of the cell to study the detailed structure. There are millions of living organisms. They are different shapes and sizes. Their organs also vary in shape, size, and number of cells. Now, let me study about some of them. Number of cells. Can you guess the number of cells in a tall tree or in a large animal? Like that elephant, the number runs into billions and trillions. My dear students, human body has trillions of cells which vary in shapes and sizes. Different groups of cells perform a variety of functions. Organisms made up of more than one cell are called multicellular. Multi means many and cellular means cells. They are called multicellular organisms. The number of cells being less in smaller organisms does not in any way affect the functioning of the organisms. You will be surprised to know that an organism with billions of cells begins life as a single cell, which is the fertilized egg. The fertilized egg cell multiplies and the number of cells increase as development proceeds. Now, dear students, both organisms are made up of a single cell. The single celled organisms are called unicellular organisms. A single celled organism performs all the necessary functions that multicellular organisms perform. Dear students, this was the basic introduction to the chapter cell. Inshallah, we will be discussing from here afterwards in the next session. Till then, Allah Hafiz. Assalamu alaikum.